And so then what I did is I took a sample of 28,000 of these people and watched who was drawn to whom. And here is the data. Female explorers are drawn to male explorers. Male explorers, high dopamine, are drawn to female explorers. Female builders, the very traditional, is drawn to male builders. Male builders are drawn to female builders. In these two cases, birds of a feather flock together. Similarity attracts. Female directors, Hillary Clinton, is drawn to male negotiators, Bill Clinton. Male directors, high testosterone, are drawn to high estrogen, female negotiators. This is the standard. This is what we think of Americans as the powerful head of the bank male with the sweet, charming wife, and you can't understand why they go for each other, and sure enough, they do. Female negotiator goes for male director, and male negotiator goes for female director. In this case, opposites attract. So, over and over, constantly people are asking, well, do opposites attract? And my response is, it depends. It depends on who you are chemically. So I think that love is a little like a funnel. You walk into a room, you're ready to fall in love, the timing is right, you scan the room, and you suddenly see somebody. And you say, yeah, if he were to like me, you bet, I could go for him. So you go over in, or he comes over and you start talking, and he opens his mouth. He has a horrible accent. He's out. He's out. No way. Can't do it. But instead he talks about something that's terribly interesting. He's in. He stays in. And you begin to then discover that he voted for Sarah Palin. He's out. That's out. Or he is interested in evolutionary biology. He's in. And then you find out that he's broke and you're broke and that's not going to work for you. He's out. And then you discover that he's really a wonderful guy. And then you discover he's a sword swallower in the circus and you're on your way to medical school. He's out. No way. And et cetera. But at some point in this funnel, I think also your basic body chemistry is pulling you towards certain kinds of people. People who are adventurous want people who will get up off the couch and go with them to the theater or into the woods or swimming after dark or whatever. They are drawn to people like themselves. So is the builder. Traditional wants traditional, whereas the director, the high testosterone, is very drawn to the high estrogen and vice versa. So what makes it last? As I say with my colleagues, put 17 people who had just, who reported that they were still in love after an average of 21 years of marriage into the machine, into the brain scanner. And in fact, we found that the same brain regions associated with intense feelings of romantic love can last. Love can last. The American concept is that early stage intense romantic love cannot last. It does last. What disappears is that early anxiety, part of the anterior insular cortex, a brain region associated with bodily feelings, deactivates. So the tension, the stress disappears in a long-term romance. You still want to talk to the person, you want to share what happened today with them, you want to talk to them, you can say that you're in love with them, but that early stage intense anxiety is now replaced by calm. In fact, we found activity in brain regions directly associated with calm. So I'll just go very rapidly through some of these types and then close. Explorers, they're not going to have any problems on a daily level. They're probably not going to do much bickering. I've got a boyfriend who's also an explorer, and not too long ago I was roasting a chicken, and I pulled the chicken out and it slid right off the plate and right into the corner of my kitchen. I thought it was hilarious. And so I called him in to see where the chicken was. And he thought it was hilarious. And we washed the chicken off. We ate the chicken. We didn't have any, we don't bicker. We can have other problems which are much larger, but we don't bicker. They're both enthusiastic and optimistic. They can both be extravagant and impulsive, highly energetic, curious, many interests, adaptable, flexible, open-minded, irreverent, avoid plans. They're unconventional. Daily life probably can be thrilling among two explorers. I think their problems are more likely to come from being unpredictable, being reckless, being addictive, and being unreflective. The explorer looks out, not in. And other types really look in. I think as a matter of fact, I was giving a speech to a group of couples therapists in California a few months ago, and I said, well, I'm the explorer type, and I really don't care who I am. And somebody from the back of the room screamed, well, you want to talk about that? And I really didn't want to talk about that. But long and short of it is, I don't think these are the type that are going to bicker on a daily level. They're too flexible. They got too many other interests. They're too irreverent. I think their problems will be big problems. I think these are a perfect example of two explorers. Look at the facial expression. I mean, it's just a wonderful... I think these are the ones that are going to shut the door on their wedding night and stay married forever. Not even discuss the divorce. I think their problems are going to be because they're stubborn and more closed-minded. I think they will bicker. I recently got a letter from a young friend of mine who married about a year ago, and she said, yeah, well, last week we had a fight over how you cook a turkey, and yesterday we had a fight over how you put down a rug on the floor. And I think the builder type is going to expend a good deal of energy on little daily things because they've got a set way of doing things. But I think they'll build a long, stable, I think it'll be a very stable marriage, just a very different kind of marriage than the explorer. George Bush, I think I'll skip him and go on to the director and the negotiator. Here we have two people who are very different from each other. Narrow, focused, sees the big picture, and unfocused. The director's the type that says, get to the point. And the negotiator says, I am getting to the point. I'm going everywhere to get to that point. I'm going to go around every barn and get to that point. Indecisive, very decisive. They can help each other there. Decisive can help indecisive. Indecisive can make sure that decisive doesn't make the decision too fast. Tender-hearted can help the tough-minded and vice versa. Sympathetic can be very useful to the unsympathetic. Analytical can be very helpful to the intuitive. The reflective can demand some self-reflection. The mechanically challenged can definitely use somebody who can fix the stereo. Imaginative, but they're going to have good conversations because they both are theoretical, both imaginative, both like ideas. And I think, I've often wondered, what do these people see in each other? But I would guess that they have very good conversations. And to those conversations, they bring extremely different worldviews that can, if it's a real love affair, they can really add to each other's perspectives. Their problems are going to be because they really are very different people. This one can regard this one as aloof, unempathetic, impatient, and this one can regard this one as simply just illogical. And I think here we have a good example of some of the problems that can occur. I think this is a better example of the standard type, when Sully Sullenberger landed his plane in the Hudson River. And when he was interviewed over and over and over, all he could say over and over was, I was just doing my job. That's all he said. His wife cried and thanked everybody and everything. A very emotionally expressive, I think, negotiator with the highly analytical, logical, self-contained, high testosterone type director. So I will close with this. I use these slides just to make a point here. Women tend to define intimacy as face-to-face talking. We rotate until we are right in front of each other. We do what is called the anchoring gaze, and we talk. And this is intimacy to women. Men tend to get intimacy from side-by-side doing. I think that women get there. I think this comes from millions of years of holding that baby in front of your face, cajoling it, reprimanding it, educating it with words, from which we get intimacy. I think that men get intimacy from side-by-side doing. As soon as he looks up, he'll look away. I think it may come from millions of years of sitting behind that bush, looking out over the veldt, trying to hit that buffalo in the head with a rock. You can't be sitting like this if you're going to try and catch dinner. And the problem comes, of course, when we don't understand each other. Thank you.
So let me make a couple quick comments before we have a few questions for Helen. First of all, we have to whisk her away, but she has pre-signed the books that are out in the lobby. So if you wish to purchase some of her books, they're signed by the author, and they're available for sale out in the lobby. Secondly, to tell you that isn't it wonderful that we're probably going to form a number of collaborative research projects with Helen, and so that we could continue this wonderful inquiry in future scientific endeavors. And so, so now let me ask, see, just a few questions now. So, speak loudly, please.
Yes, I have a question. You spoke about romantic love versus passion.
Right.
And that you look around the room and find someone to filter romantic love. What about all the stories you hear about people who are friends for years?
Great.
And realize something?
Great.
I just noticed that there's microphones on each side of the aisles, and so I think we heard you loud and clear, but for future questions, if you want to ask a question, could you please line up on each side here, and we'll take maybe 5 or 6 questions before we finish. So,
yeah, that's a wonderful question. For people who didn't hear the question, it's basically, what about people who have a long, deep friendship and attachment, and then they fall in love? These 3 brain systems, the sex drive, romantic love, and attachment, are not phases starting with one to the other. They're different brain systems. So I think you can start with any one of the 3. For example, you can fall madly in love with somebody before you've ever kissed them. Then you go to bed with them. Or you can go to bed with somebody for a while, and boom, one day you fall in love with them. And so then the second system is triggered. Or you can form a deep attachment to somebody in school, a neighbor, somebody at work, and then their wife leaves them and your husband leaves you, whatever it is, and then the attachment turns into romantic love. That's often misunderstood by the press, actually, that you first have sex, then you fall in love, and then you form the attachment. I think that any one of these 3 brain systems can start the relationship and then move into the others. Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be recorded if you do. Is that right?
Okay. I was wondering, you have these 4 groups, and I was wondering if that was an arbitrary choice to choose 4, or if it really fit in those 4 instead of, say, 8 groups, 12 groups, 100 groups.
If I had found 8 groups, I would have used 8 groups. If I had found 16 groups, I would have found 16 groups. Now, we're all a combination of all of them. For example, you know, a person, and I've never met 2 people who are alike ever in my life. And I'm an identical twin, actually, and I don't even think we're alike. You know, she's a hot air balloon pilot, and I write books about sex and love and adultery and divorce. So we can both tolerate risk. We just do it very differently. But now my mind's wandered over what you're saying. Ah, yes. There's a lot of chemicals in the brain that, by the way, this is all ratios. And I go with the dopamine system. But it certainly is the dopamine system in relationship to the serotonin system, even to all kinds of other systems in the brain. So I'm just sort of getting my point, man, the main chemical that is involved in this. Now, there's a lot of other chemicals in the brain that don't code for personality traits. These actually 6 chemicals, dopamine and norepinephrine, they're only one tiny little variation from one another, seem together to be associated with novelty-seeking, risk-taking, etc. Serotonin is associated with a different constellation of traits, and as is testosterone and estrogen and oxytocin. Those are the chemicals that, as we know so far in science, are the chemicals that are associated with personality traits, as opposed to cortisol. Cortisol is associated with the stress response, but not necessarily with personality traits. So I have 4 because I looked, and those were the ones that popped out. By the way, I'm not the first person to find 4. Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, talked about the 4 humors. Plato talked about several of these. Aristotle did. Galen in the 2nd century did. Paracelsus in the 15th century did. Carl Jung did. Myers and Briggs did, if anybody knows the Myers-Briggs material. What I've really done is hooked it up with the biology and then watched who's drawn to who.